The Unseen Symphony. Chapter 1, The Static in My Soul. Andrea Davenport felt like a radio tuned to the wrong frequency. Static crackled in her mind, a constant hum of anxiety that drowned out the music of her own life. She was a chameleon, constantly shifting her colors to blend into the expectations of others. At work, she was the efficient, smiling project manager. With her family, she was the dutiful daughter, the supportive sister. But alone, in the quiet sanctuary of her apartment, the static grew louder, a discordant symphony of self-doubt. She'd always felt unseen, a ghost drifting through the brightly lit rooms of her life. Her emotions were locked in a vault, the combination known only to some elusive, future self. She longed for someone to truly see her, not the curated version she presented to the world, but the raw, vulnerable Andrea beneath. One rainy Tuesday, a new colleague, Ethan, joined her team. He wasn't the typical boisterous, backslapping type. He was quiet, observant, his eyes holding a depth that intrigued Andrea. During a particularly stressful project, she found herself confiding in him about her anxieties. She expected the usual platitudes, the just relax and think positive mantras that felt like sandpaper against her raw nerves. Instead, Ethan listened. Really listened. He didn't offer solutions, but he offered something far more valuable: validation. He acknowledged her struggles, recognized the weight of her unspoken fears. He saw her. Chapter 2, The Key in the Melody. Ethan's presence was a subtle shift in Andrea's internal weather. He was a gentle rain after a long drought, a quiet melody that began to weave its way through the static. He saw the cracks in her carefully constructed facade, not with judgment, but with a quiet understanding. He saw the potential for a symphony within her, a beautiful composition waiting to be played. One evening, after a particularly challenging day, Andrea found herself sharing her childhood dream of playing the cello. It was a dream she'd buried long ago, convinced she wasn't talented enough. Ethan didn't dismiss it as childish fancy. He encouraged her, suggesting she take lessons. The first time she held a cello, it felt foreign, awkward. But as she drew the bow across the strings, a tentative note emerged. It was shaky, imperfect, but it was hers. It was a note of vulnerability, a note of hope. Chapter 3, The Crescendo of Self. The cello became Andrea's sanctuary. Each note was a step towards self-discovery, a shedding of the layers of pretense she'd worn for so long. The music was a language her soul understood, a way to express the emotions she'd kept locked away. Through the music, and through Ethan's unwavering belief in her, Andrea began to see herself. She wasn't just the sum of other people's expectations. She was a complex, multifaceted individual with her own unique melody. She was learning to embrace the dissonance, the imperfections, the static, understanding that they were all part of her symphony. One day, Andrea decided to perform at a local open mic night. Standing on the stage, bathed in the spotlight, she felt a wave of fear wash over her. But then, she looked out at the audience, and she saw Ethan. His eyes, filled with warmth and encouragement, were a beacon in the darkness. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to play. The music flowed through her, a powerful crescendo of self-acceptance. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was sharing her soul, her vulnerability, her true self, with the world. Epilogue. Andrea's journey wasn't about eradicating the static. It was about learning to listen to the music beneath it. It was about finding the courage to be seen, truly seen, for who she was, flaws and all. She learned that vulnerability wasn't weakness, but strength. And she discovered that the most beautiful symphonies are often composed of both light and shadow, the seen and the unseen, the quiet whispers of the soul and the resounding notes of self-acceptance. The love she had been searching for was not something to be found in another person, but within herself. And once she found it, she was finally free.